Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the first episode of The Right Side of History. I'm Tomás Contreras. This is
Professor Peck.
And the point of the whole show is to examine history and see if what is being told is being told correctly. Today's episode...
We're killing Santa Claus.
Yes, we are. Today's episode, what myth are we going to destroy today? It is FDR is an American hero and saved us from the Depression.
Well, it just goes to show you, Tomas, fake news didn't start with Trump. It's been around since at least 1932.
All right, guys, we're going to be right when we get back. We're going to jump into it. See you soon.
See you then.
All right, everybody, we're back. Today's topic, the Mythbusters of history, are going to take on FDR was an American hero and saved us from the Depression.
Stop saying that.
Okay. So we're going to go point by point. First, we're going to start with the Depression. So, Professor, before we go into why people believe it and why it's not true that FDR saved us from the Depression, give us some framework. What dates are we talking about for the Great Depression, and when does this story begin?
Sure. Well, the Great Depression really kind of started in 1929, so prior to FDR. It was actually under Hoover where the Depression actually started.
Hoover was the car, and everybody had a car in the garage or something like that.
A chicken in every pot is what I've always heard of.
Exactly, yeah. And a car in the star or something, right?
Yeah, something like that. So Hoover, the great stock market crash happened in 29. The Depression continued through about 1939. Okay. And into 1940-ish. It's sort of fuzzy there.
Now, when does FDR become president?
He becomes president in 1932.
Okay, so about 3 years after the market crash.
Right.
Okay, go ahead. So we framed the dates. Tell us why people believe it and why it's not true that he saved us from the Great Depression.
Well, what the magic of FDR was, he was the first mass communication president. Okay. He was the first one to be out on radio a lot, and to be able to communicate directly with the people. And he had a plan. Everybody was in a desperate situation, and he had a plan. 25% of the entire population was out of work. Okay.
Why is that?
To frame that up, the Depression caused everybody to lose that up. To frame that up, people were losing their minds when Barack Obama had like 9.5% unemployment. Okay, so 25%, 1 in 4 people were out of work. Wow. And so, at the time, men were primarily the only breadwinner in the house, so this was a difficult spot. Right. So now he came out with a new deal, this great new deal that was supposed to save us all, give us all money, and bring us back to prosperity. And it was really a bill of goods. Okay, so break down his deal. What is this deal? Well, the New Deal was a collection of policies and programs that were meant to put people to work, give them extra money, stimulate the economy. Maybe stimulate the economy. It wasn't stimulation like direct funding, but that's where Keynesian economics came in, and that was the other thing that FDR did, was he implemented a concept called Keynesian economics. It was off of theories from a man named John Maynard Keynes. Okay. And he created this program that basically told governments, when you are in economic downfall, you need to go into deficit spending. Okay. Spend all of your treasury, lower taxes, raise government spending, so there's a huge pool of money in the economy for people to spend, and the consumer will drive the economy. Okay, so I understand the part where you're saying, government starts spending a lot of money, right? Sure. What was the other part that you stated? To lower taxes. Lower taxes. Yeah. Okay, so I understand that. So you take that burden off the people. What does government spending, how does that stimulate the economy, or reverse the effects of depression? When government spends money, they have to spend it on something. Okay. So if government spends it on soda pop, It makes the soda industry hire more people and that type of thing. So whatever they're spending it on, it's going to increase that area of the economy.
Now, should we go into what these programs were and what they spend, or should we first touch on, you said something interesting, he introduced a new economic system.
Sure.
What was the system before it? Now I understand it was the gold standard, right?
The gold standard was a piece of the economy, but what happened prior to implementing the Keynesian style of economics was what they called laissez-faire. Laissez-faire means to leave it alone. If you leave it alone, the economy will heal itself, and everything will get back to normal. The right industries will grow, the wrong ones will die, that sort of thing. But it's almost sort of like natural selection.
Now, in your opinion, as a professor, back then and today, is that the best? Is that laissez-faire? Is that the way to go?
I would tend to say that laissez-faire is a much better system. I tend to think that government introduced and government promoted systems tend to do more damage than they do good. Give you an example. Keynesian economics was meant to eliminate the boom and bust cycle of the capitalist economy.
Explain boom and bust.
Well, in a capitalist society, the economy will have cycles, and part of that cycle they will boom, and everybody will be rich, fat, and happy. Well, there will also be times where there is a decline in business and activity and economic activity, and so instead we will be in a bust.
So I know we've talked about this before in just our regular conversations.
Sure.
It's your opinion that that's kind of how the world works.
Sure.
And we're going to have depressions. We're going to have low points if we continue with the same system, or just, what is it, just patience to get through it and it'll work itself out?
If you put any system in there, give an example. Keynesian was supposed to end that. We have had several recessions and economic downturns since the Depression. Almost the number that we've had since the Depression are about the same since before the Depression. So Keynesian really is it offers hope. It's a placebo. It's a sugar pill for people to say, gosh, this is helping me. This is helping our country. And in the end, it's just, it doesn't do much.
So he introduces these. What's the government spending at this time?
So government spending explodes at this time. They start spending it on a number of things. CCC, the Citizens Conservation Council, and then they have the Works Projects Administrations. Works Projects Administrations, for example, they still, if you go around to many towns and cities all around the country, there are bridges and there are swimming pools, a lot of infrastructure and municipal things that the WPA, the Works Project Administration, built for the people. Well, there's only a static number of things that the government can come up with to, hey, here you go, build. We can build these little things. And at some point, there's no more to build, and here we are. Back to the drawing board. Well, the people were getting paid for a while, these little jobs and things like that. The CCC would go out and plant trees and try to build, do conservation projects.
So it's more something you could visibly see and believe in, rather than something that's actually stimulating the economy.
Exactly.
Is there more what other things?
Well, they did a lot of stuff that were anti-business and really depressed business. One of them was NRA, National Recovery Act, and then NERA, which is the National Industrial Recovery Act, and what they call the alphabet programs of FDR. They really had their hand in about everything. NRA and NERA, in my opinion, were probably the worst because they were doing wage and price freezes. Wage and price freezes meant that whatever your income was, if you wanted to get a raise, there was no raises given, and they wouldn't let you raise prices on any of your goods.
So the thought process behind that is, we're already hurting, so right now make do with what you have, and we can't try to stimulate our own business by trying to turn some more profit?
Well, they couldn't do that. The government was kind of leading that.
Right.
The wage and price freezes were from the government. Well, what this did, what the government basically did, it says, okay, the companies we're gonna freeze those wages for most of your professional class, but what we're going to do is we're going to change the way you have to do business with your labor. So the labor, they're saying, okay, we're gonna force companies to unionize, and with a union shop, they have to pay their workers more. And here we go. It's everybody gets to get more money on that end, on the production end, but at the professional end, they don't get any more money. Okay. So, and they're not allowed to raise prices. So when you have raised labor costs, and you can't raise any more money. Yeah, exactly. You just end up with a disaster, and people just didn't hire any more people.
Wow.
They cut off hiring more people. So it was one of these things. He stagnated things, and at some point, at the height of the Depression, there were something like 11.5 million people unemployed.
Wow.
And that's a big number at that point. But and it'll be interesting later when we talk about it, how that issue of unemployment got fixed.
Okay, so before we go to break, highlight some more points that we're going to cover that prove that FDR was not an American hero, and he did not save us from the Depression. Kind of hit those points, and then we'll go to break and come back.
Well, one of the things that he did was he eliminated the gold. He got us off the gold standard and made our money worthless.
Okay, so we'll definitely go into that more.
Then he was a racist.
Okay.
And that was economically and
policies.
And through policy. And then he, basically got us into war.
A war. Okay.
Big one.
All right, guys, we'll be back here soon. FDR, American hero, saved us from the Depression. We'll see.
Stop saying that.
Okay. All right, so you were talking about the gold standard. That was before Keynesian.
Sure.
That was what? Tell us what it was, and what's the significance even today of why that affected our economy so
well, sure. I mean, you've heard the old thing, or maybe seen the old Goldfinger movie where they were trying to rob Fort Knox.
Right.
And all the gold, I want to have all gold in Fort Knox,
well,
right?
They say it's empty now.
Well, they say it's empty now, but it was the American gold reserves. That's where they held all of our gold. And the reason why they had to have gold reserves is because our money was backed with gold.
Okay, explain that.
Well, what that basically meant was you could take a dollar bill, and the dollar bill was actually representative of a portion of gold. Okay. And all it did was represent that portion of gold. So you could actually take your dollar bills and turn them back to the government and said, hey, no, I want gold.
Okay.
And they would give you your portion of gold, and you wouldn't have currency.
Now, he moves us from the gold standard to...
He cuts us off the gold standard to a fiat currency.
Okay, explain that.
A fiat currency means that it's backed by nothing. It's the full faith and with the trust that we give into our government. Okay.
So this is what people
full faith and credit of the U.S. government. So if you believe in the U.S. government that they'll never fail, then that dollar bill is as good as gold, right?
Right. So this is what people talk about when they say the government just keeps printing money.
Sure.
And that what you were talking when we were discussing talking about this subject, some of the long-term effects were now because we printed so much money, the value of our dollar is.
Of course.
So can you go into that a little bit more?
So there's no value in our dollar. And from the minute you took it off the gold standard, there is intrinsic value in gold. Intrinsic meaning that the gold has value in itself.
Right.
Okay. But since there is no value anymore, there's nothing backing it up. It's really just a piece of paper and what you believe.
Now, how does that negatively impact our economy today?
Sure.
Why is that? Why is that a legacy?
So since we have no money, so we have no nothing backing the dollar.
Right.
The number of dollars and the amount of currency that we have floating in the system really doesn't matter. Okay, so the more of anything that you have, the less value
It's
it has.
valuable.
So it's just supply and
just a
demand.
regular principle
The
of
old law of scarcity.
For sure.
If you have so much of a product, it's not worth anything.
Right.
Okay, and that's what happened. Money is no different. If you have money, currency as a commodity, we have printed up more and more and more currency, and we've raised our debt ceiling higher and higher, knowing that it doesn't matter whether we have money or not.
Now, for the people out there who either are not politically driven, tie that into how does that affect us broadly?
Okay, easy. Your grandmother used to tell you how many, she could buy 400 candy bars with a nickel.
Right.
Okay?
Yep.
Today, you can barely get one for $1.
For sure. Not. So damn near impossible.
She wasn't lying to you. She wasn't lying to you. The amount that you can purchase with your dollar keeps getting less. And it's not because...
people think it's inflation.
Sure, it is inflation because inflation happens when the dollar can no longer buy more. And so they're raising the prices on everything because even the companies that are using the dollars that they have to make, let's go back to candy bars.
Right.
They've got to buy chocolate, right?
Right.
Well, people want more of those dollars because they're worth less to sell them the chocolate beans that they got to make Hershey's.
So the harder they work, their money is
worth less.
It's worth less.
Okay, and it's almost the last I looked at the chart or something like that, the U.S. dollar is worth something like 4 cents.
Wow.
Okay, and that is kind of a ridiculous thing, and that all came from Keynesian economics and FDR. That's all flowed to this. We have never left really a Keynesian. We have been deficit spending for as long as I can remember. We've only had a balanced budget at least twice that I can think of in the last 75 years. Once under Bill Clinton and once under Richard Nixon. Okay. Both, that's kind of a rogues gallery of presidencies. If we're going to talk about those things.
That might be a new another episode. So before we go to the break and cover, I know we wanted to talk about the war.
Oh, sure.
But before we go to the break, another part of his legacy that you kind of pinpointed that people see as positive, that you say has negatively affected the culture, but the policy and politics, was his big programs that he introduced.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
So we're talking about what? Social Security?
Yes.
And Medicare. Okay. Explain how he introduced those and why you think they're negatively impacting him, what it is economically, and I think you've mentioned even culturally it had a big impact on us.
So look at what we had. We had Social Security and Medicare.
Okay.
It was supposed to end this phenomena of elderly people in poverty.
Okay.
If we look around today, I don't think anybody can say it's done that. There are many people that are elderly in poverty, and all they do is they live on that Medicare.
Okay. Qualify that statement. What is happening at this time to where he thinks he needs to implement these particular programs for the elderly?
Well, you're also talking about it was in the Depression, and what they're looking at is he's just saying, he didn't want to see, this was the excuse that they implemented the Social Security. Really, what it really looked like is another way for the government to extract more money, put it into a system, and then pay you later. Okay, and hold it back. Because here's the thing: if you die, although it's your money and they took it out of your paycheck, if you die, you can't give that to your family. It's the government's. Societies.
Go into what you were talking about. You gave a great example of, we pay into this system, and then we get so much money back.
Sure.
Your idea of if we were allowed to take our own money, the percentage we get from the government, go into that year, that was fascinating.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So right now, people are guaranteed about 3 to 5%, depending on what the Treasury bonds
return on our
your
investment.
money.
Yeah.
So 3 to 5%. That is about 3 times less than what you could make on a mutual fund, which is not a high yield investment. So On a mutual fund, the average mutual fund is between 12 and 15%. And you're making 3 to 5%, closer to 3 than 5.
Is that as secure as, let's say, what they're doing with our money?
Again, average of 12 to 15% per year.
Okay.
You might lose, but here's the thing. Let's say this. If you made 15% one year and you lost 75% of that, you still made more than what the government gave you.
Right. So for people watching, to kind of tie it in, think of your 401k. They used to have pensions and all that. People would work their life, lose all that.
Sure.
Now you have the ability to get in there and maneuver it and make your own future.
Exactly. And look, Warren Buffett has done this his entire life. He says he's presented the idea, and then the guy's got a track record of something like $60 billion,
right,
where he has.
I think I've heard of that guy.
Yeah, you heard of him? He runs
so.
Around Iowa or runs around Nebraska. Right. You know, white hair, glasses.
For sure, I think so.
Yeah, a bunch of rich guys come here in the spring.
Yeah.
Anyway, he you know what he does is he tells us, hey, put your money in the stock market. In the long run, it's gonna gain money.
Yeah.
You know, and if you've seen the averages on the stock market, even when you have these occasional crashes, the stock market continues to make money.
Okay, so before we go to Medicare, I think you mentioned Social Security also had a cultural effect.
Sure.
And what was that? You were talking about something about families staying together.
Absolutely. So you had Social Security. Prior to Social Security, the concept was families would tend to have larger families, 6, 7, 10, 12 children.
Right.
And when the parents entered old age and could no longer work and take care of themselves, the families would share the workload and take care of their families.
Right.
There were the old age homes and the retirement homes, but not at the extent that we have them now. I mean, now it's almost like a cliche in our society, ready to stockpile mom.
Yeah.
Okay, when the minute she gets old enough, put her in a home, because guess what? Social Security pays for it, and I never have to worry about her again. She's locked away in a sterile box somewhere.
And the thing you always hear about is they're living check to check. I mean, with Social Security, they barely can support themselves, and it's terrible.
You're right. And whatever Social Security pays for is the care that they get. So let's say grandma was a secretary that doesn't pay all that much, and that was the life that she had. Social Security pays her at the rate that she earned as a secretary, the top 10 years that she earned as a secretary, which might not be a beautiful paycheck in retirement, especially when we have inflation. Now, when we look at that comparatively to the executive, he's got his 10 years that he's accepted on Social Security, and he can live in an a lot better care nursing home than your grandma.
For sure.
And it's because instead of depending on family and self-reliance, it went to the government, and we put it all on the government. And that was one of the things, the legacies of FDR that I think is the worst, is that he taught Americans, if you have a problem, look to the government instead of yourself.
Okay. So before we go to Medicare, and we'll just touch really quick on Medicare, I just wanted to note that my personal life is kind of a testament to what you're saying, because I grew up in that house that you said used to be called what? The grandmother's house?
Well, sometimes they had these houses in the back of a little house. They call them the mother-in-law's house.
And that's where we grew up.
Exactly.
Because we lived in a house behind a house. And it was a small house. It was sufficient for what we needed, but it's a testament to what you were saying. That was the plan, was to take your mom, take care of her.
Exactly.
Keep their independence, but just keep an eye on them, watch them as family. Right?
Exactly. They were right there, and you could go. They still exist. Run around your hometown. I'm sure that and pretty much every hometown in America, there's a little house stuck behind another house somewhere, wherever you're living, and that used to be someone's grandma living there.
So, touch on Medicare. What are some of the the long-term effects today that we see from Medicare?
Well, here we go. We got Medicare, and Medicare is another one of these things. So Medicare was a system that was basically health insurance for the elderly, but they have to pay for it too.
Okay.
Okay. So this is no free. This is no government. This is, and the problem with Medicare was that it limits who you can go to. Not every doctor takes it. So let's say you had a doctor that you had your whole life, you loved it. They know exactly what's wrong with you. They know how you react to different medications and things. You might not be able to go see that person anymore. Medicare has just eliminated that problem. They're saying, no, you can't go see him anymore. We won't pay for that. He won't accept our Medicare coverage.
Now, a big thing in society though today as a pushback is people, even with insurance or without insurance, can't seem to get the necessary medical attention they need.
Okay.
Whether it's checkups or emergencies, whatever. That's something that rings throughout the country. So where does this all kind of come into play for those people looking for basic health care?
FDR invented the concept of medical insurance. Remember when we were talking about those wage and price freezes?
Yeah.
This is how companies got around that. They said, okay, well, they won't let us raise our wages so we can attract the best executives. We're just going to go ahead and we're going to go ahead and give people benefits. So what was the benefit that they gave? They gave them insurance, and it all went to the executives. So the top level echelon executives got health insurance. Oh, you're sick? Go to the doctor, right? That system didn't really permeate into the rest of society till the late 70s. So prior to that, most people would go to the doctor and pay it out of pocket.
But now they go, let's just say, for example, and I'm a testament to this. I was very passionate about something like this. You go to, let's just say, an emergency room. Let's just use that, for example. There's better ones. No, let's use a better example. Someone who has insurance, has cancer, and they say they can't even afford to get that. Does this come into play with that? Why is that the case? Is this involved in that at all?
Exactly. This is what happened. So they created a system as that insurance system where everybody says, oh, we need to have insurance. We need to have insurance.
So before, no insurance.
Yeah.
Now we have insurance.
Now we all have health insurance.
Okay.
And you've now created a system that you can't be outside the system.
Okay.
If you're outside the system, you're screwed.
Yeah.
If you're inside the system, you're okay. You're going to be able to get some health care. Maybe it's not the greatest health care, but you'll get some health care. Okay. You're still probably going to go broke, but you're going to live.
Right.
Okay. Outside the system, God bless you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can't afford it.
So you've created a system that you've got to be in the club. And if you're outside the club, too bad.
What happened to the prices?
Now you had insurance. They are dictating the prices.
Wow.
Okay, there you go. The question is, so now the doctors never make their own prices. It is dictated by their health management group, whoever owns them. So like say if it's Joe's Health, CHI Health, or Methodist, or whoever it is. I don't want to be biased. I don't know who they are.
Right.
But anyway, those health management companies are setting the prices with the insurance company. They're going to say, okay, well, we think it costs $150 a person to come into a doctor's appointment. Okay. Why does it cost $150? Well, we just want to hedge our bets, basically. Because basically, if we break it down and you look at the average number of clients that are in an average family practitioner, it's about 2,000 a year. Mm-hmm. So let's say that he has a $200,000 job. Well, you're talking about if they go twice a year, it's about $45 a person that is spent on each person. Now, he has overhead and everything like that, but you really think that it's $100 every time they walk in the door? No. Come on. They're giving arbitrary numbers, and there are some things that the doctor can do nothing about that people are going to the doctor for, like sniffles and viruses and things like that. Maybe you have stomach flu. There's just nothing that can be done. So there's no real costs involved in you showing up. Yet the insurance company pays him $150 every time you walk in the door.
Wow. So I think that's a good place to stop. When we come back, we're going to talk about World War II, FDR's legacy with that, and we'll kind of close and do a recap. Thanks for sticking with us. This is The Right Side of History. Now, before we get into his legacy of the war, I did remember that you wanted to talk about some of his social justice legacy, and it begins with actual not Medicare, not Social Security, but welfare.
With welfare.
Okay.
Well, look at welfare. We're talking about the Depression now. Everybody was affected. As I said, there was 25% of people out of work. That includes blacks and every other minority that we had in the United States. But I kind of think about the black community because they were really smitten with FDR. FDR was, their champion because they believed in that New Deal. That hey, we're going to get a New Deal and he's going to help us, and we're all we're going to succeed. Everybody believed in him. He was a great marketer, if nothing.
All right.
Okay. But the fact of the matter is when it came down to the money getting distributed into the United States, he actually funneled that money away from black communities. He funneled away from the South unless it was going to white communities and things like that. So he wasn't helping them at all. And the idea of welfare, we think of welfare and, a lot of people think, welfare and the ghetto and that type of thing. And that's just a product of really bad neighborhoods and things like that. But during the Depression, it was only a very, very select few people that could get welfare, and it tended to be whites.
Okay.
Blacks never got welfare till the Great Society programs of the '60s.
Okay.
Okay. So
it was written into the law that he created that those benefits that were supposed to help America were not even allowed to its own citizens.
Sure.
Whether it's the black community or whatever.
Yeah. They just really picked and chose who they would give that money to, and it really, if you were black, you weren't getting it. So and it was really kind of a sad thing. Now, moving forward on sort of this concept of being a racist is his treatment of the Japanese Americans.
Okay, explain that. Are you talking about the camps, right?
The camps.
Okay, so what framed this for us? This is the start of our involvement of the war. Okay, go ahead.
So in 1941, the Japanese Imperial Navy attacked Pearl Harbor. Many people have heard of that.
Right.
It was not the Germans. They did not bomb Pearl Harbor, okay? So if you have a millennial out there that might have missed that, they didn't bomb us. Okay, it was the Japanese.
Yeah.
Anyway,
why did the Japanese bomb us? Let's frame this history.
Sure. Well, the Japanese bombed us because we started an embargo. We wouldn't sell them any more oil.
And that's something FDR.
Sure, FDR did that. Okay. He was, in my opinion, was picking sides. A lot of that stuff goes. We'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. But a lot of the things that he was doing at the time were really acts of war against people that we were at the time not fighting. But to go back, the Japanese did attack us at Pearl Harbor, and it caused a lot of great anxiety. We, of course, declared war the next couple days. And on right after that, they started creating these issues with the Japanese on the West Coast. They believed that they were going to be loyal to the Japanese government and things like that, although they were Americans. So FDR, he can't blame it on Congress. He can't blame it on anybody. He signed an executive order that forced Japanese people to go into internment camps into the interior of the United States, Colorado, into the desert, Arizona, many different places like this, made them live in an internment camp for the duration of the war.
Something despicable.
Sure.
Just like his welfare system.
Sure. George Takei, famous actor from the Star Trek series, was an example of an interred Japanese, Japanese American.
Wow.
Pat Morita, Mr. Miyagi, the Karate Kid, was also part of that internment. So Again, FDR can't blame this on anybody but himself. You didn't see any Germans getting put into internment camps.
Right.
You didn't see any Italians doing the same thing, and there were plenty more Germans than Italians here, and probably more dangerous as far as numbers went than any of the Japanese. But yet the Japanese were sent to a camp to live out their days from at least 42 to 1945.
That's I don't think a lot of people even know that time frame.
Probably not.
That's crazy. So this leads into the war.
Sure.
Now, before we go into it, you say his legacy is what? If you could summarize whatever his actions from the war, what is the legacy that you see he leads versus what they see him as his hero?
I see him as a man who saw the world on fire and felt like he always did with everything else. I got to give FDR credit that he had a lot of self-confidence, that he was the guy to fix the problem. And because of that, that's why he served 4 terms as a president.
Right.
He did not believe. Yeah. He believed that he was the only one that could do it, and I think he thought the same thing about World War II. He was talking with Winston Churchill in England and hearing how Europe was burning. He was talking to the Chinese and some of their allies in Asia and saying, hey, these Japanese are taking over everything. He's seeing the Japanese rape Tonkin, or not Tonkin, excuse me, rape Nanking. And I think he says, I have to do this. I have to get involved somehow. Yeah. So he does a couple of things. He introduces Lend-Lease, which was a program to lend or lease war materials to our allies. Which would have been England and Russia at that time.
Wow.
He was giving them war materials, which is an act of war. Okay.
To pick a side.
To pick a side for saying, he didn't give it to the Germans. He gave it to England. He also, in Japan, he cut off their oil. So he said, okay, they cut off strategic supplies.
Now this was prior to the bombing.
That was prior to the bombing. That was what led to the bombing.
What led to the embargo, or if I'm using the incorrect word?
They had attacked China, and they were fighting through China. And again,
those are allies, because I thought they had a communist history.
Not 1941.
They were our allies.
They were an ally. They were. In fact, they were mostly dominated by British and other European interests.
Okay.
It wasn't until it's like Chiang Kai-shek was the nationalist leader, and he fought Mao Zedong in 1945 to 1948, fought a war and ended up fleeing to Taiwan. But we'll get into China on another day.
Okay.
But they were not communists at the time.
Okay.
Anyway, so we were trying to support China at the time, because they were more of an ally than Japan, I guess, at the time was, and it turned out in December 1941, the Japanese decided they were definitely not our ally, and they attacked us December 7th, of course, and that was all led from an oil embargo. We refused to sell them any more oil, and that was something that put them over the edge. They saw it as a war, an act of war, which internationally it is an act of war, as well as the Lend-Lease Act. So I think FDR was saying, we need to get to the war. I'm the only one that can solve this, and he got us into World War II.
Okay.
My problem with him getting us into World War II is I don't think that he knew how to prosecute the war.
Okay, explain that.
So he went through the war, and of course he let his generals handle it. He had foresight to get Dwight Eisenhower, the real reason why we won World War II.
Okay.
He put him in as the supreme commander. So Dwight D. Eisenhower was the real president that won us World War II, and not FDR.
Okay.
Okay. So Dwight D. Eisenhower, fought the battle, got it done. The worst thing, the legacy that probably is the worst from Franklin Roosevelt, was what happened at the end of the war.
Okay.
We win the war. We win the war in Europe. We win the war in Japan. We actually hadn't really won the war in Japan. I got ahead of myself there. We win the war in Europe, and FDR is dying.
Okay. This is his
1945. He'd just been elected to his 4th term.
Okay.
He's a sick old man.
Right. Polio. Right?
Yeah. Well, the polio was there, but he is. It's just age and stress and life. You see him from a few years prior to 1945. He is tired.
Okay.
He goes to Yalta instead of sending a second or sending Truman or sending somebody to negotiate in terms for the United States that are going to be better. He goes ahead and
now you're talking about
himself.
Negotiate terms of the end of the war, basically.
Yes, with how they're going to settle Europe
right.
at the end of the war.
Yeah.
It's Russia with Stalin.
Okay.
England with Winston Churchill,
okay.
and the United States with FDR.
And they're meeting where?
We're in Yalta.
And this is the year
Yalta,
This is year
1945.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so the war is winding down.
Yeah.
FDR and Churchill signed an agreement that basically says wherever the Russian army is occupying at that time, that's they get to have influence over those areas. So that's all of Eastern Europe and into Eastern Germany. So it created this satellite economy that the Soviets could draw from. Okay, it made them ever more powerful than they ever were before. Okay, and it enslaved most of Eastern Europe. So Hungary, Czechoslovakia, Yugoslavia. They tried to get into Greece, Bulgaria, Poland, East Germany. All of these are under Soviet control.
So what you're saying is, by doing that, not only are you putting your stamp of approval on the subjugation of nations that were free before then, but he also empowered someone he didn't know would be later an enemy or would create
I'm not sure that he didn't know that they weren't going to be an enemy.
Okay, why do you say that?
Just because...
Because why are they at the table with us?
Yeah,
for those who are modern, it's kind of the understanding. We kind of have this feeling since the Cold War, we've always kind of been at war with Russia. We've always been at odds.
Sure.
Which is weird now with your guy Trump, how close he is with
my
Putin.
guy Trump.
Yeah, your friend Trump. How close he is with Putin. It's really, so kind of explain this. So what is this, you say he didn't quite know that? Qualify that.
I don't think that, I think that it was fairly obvious that they weren't real friends.
Okay, why would you say that?
Well, they helped start the war.
Explain.
Oh yeah, sure. Stalin and Hitler worked it out to split up Poland. They both attacked Poland at the beginning of the war, took over Poland, tried to split it in half, and Hitler reneged on the deal and decided to attack Russia. So Russia was every bit the aggressor in World War II as Germany was.
So why would FDR get into bed with Russia?
The enemy of my enemy is my friend.
Okay.
Okay.
At that very point,
sure.
Just that moment.
At that moment, they were fighting. And the other thing about the Russians and communism, at that time, there was still some idealism out there that communism was this benefit and that what do you want to call it? The rise up of labor and the masses are going to have their own government, the workers' rights and all that. They didn't see the horrors until later. So some people still had that belief, but towards the end of the war, there was a lot of people that were seeing that these Russians weren't such good people. I mean, hell, at Stalingrad, they killed 1 million of their own people when they would try to flee. So there was no way to, when they fought the Battle of Stalingrad, any Russians that tried to retreat were shot by their own people.
So to summarize, you stated that was probably his worst legacy.
Sure.
Summarize exactly, if you could, short, for who's listening, why is that his worst legacy?
The thing that came out of that was the Cold War. Shortly after World War II, they created the Warsaw Pact and made the Iron Curtain. You couldn't get in, couldn't get out. They did things their way, and the West did things their way. Well, what did this create? This created spies and the arms race and this general distrust of everything. Well, what also happened was that the free society, like the United States and England and things like that, worked all over the world to try to create areas of influence in strategic areas of the world. So Middle East. So we try to create strategic influence in the Middle East. Asia, Africa, all of these. South America. And they try to make sure that these people are our allies. Well, the Russians are doing the same thing. And so there's all these conflicts all over the world and bad blood created all over the world because of that nonsense. We had a problem with Cuba. Cuba nearly put up nuclear missiles for Russia on our back door. Okay. In Turkey, we became friends with Turkey and set them up, and we put missiles in Turkey. Okay. Israel is less about the religious background and more about Arab versus, of course, the Jewish nation. Arabs were recruited by the Nazis to help fight World War II. Yasser Arafat's family were involved with Nazis.
Wow. Okay,
so now go to Asia, for example. The Korean issue, Kim Jong-un, right?
Yeah.
His grandfather was installed in North Korea as the leader by Stalin. Okay, so all over the world, all of our geopolitical problems that we have today flow back to the Cold War and back to that failure at Yalta.
So we empowered our enemy to empower more enemies.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. So we created millions around the world. Go to Iran, for example.
Yeah.
Iran, the reason why they hate us, it goes back to 1953. They tried to install a new prime minister named Mossadegh. And Mossadegh was, nobody really knew enough about him, and he was leaned to the left, and he nationalized the oil fields. So it stole a bunch of oil wells that British Petroleum had built, and England had more influence in Iran than the United States did. So what they did is they said, hey, listen, this Mossadegh character is aligned with the Soviet Union. Okay, can't have that. The United States said, okay, we're going to perform a coup. So the CIA performed a coup and put the Shah of Iran, which is the king of Iran, back on the throne and threw this Mossadegh out. Well, this created resentment in the basic people of Iran, the regular rank and file person of Iran. And that lasted, the next 20 years until, the Shah died in 1979, and the Ayatollahs rose to power, and they've held it ever since. And it's always been death to America since then, because they remember what happened in 1953.
Wow.
So all of these world events are all based on that event at Yalta. You send a younger guy who's more willing to get a better deal. Maybe they needed a young Donald Trump.
Yeah, I don't think so. When we get back, we're going to kind of go over the points and close it out. Thank you, Right Side of History. All right, Professor, let's do a recap of what we covered today.
Sure. We went through the fact that FDR did not end the Depression. That happened in 1940. He pushed us into war. He implemented a new system of economics that has killed our economy and made our money worthless. He created a system to help people that was racist, and he continued that racism when we went to war, because then he put American citizens into camps because he thought that they might turn on us like a dog. Then we went to war, and the real president who saved us in World War II, Dwight D. Eisenhower, won it, and then he screwed it all up by creating the Cold War when he went to Yalta and created a bad deal, a real bad deal.
Okay.
He screwed up bigly.
All right, so there you have it. Professor Peck's broken it down. FDR, an American hero, and saved us from the war.
That's it!